Hello everyone, this is Dr. Julia with Harmonious Living. I'm so glad that you joined me. So come on in and take a seat and make yourself comfortable. As a life coach, it is my goal to help you live a more harmonious life with purpose, passion, positivity, and power. In this season, I have 10 episodes of inspiration and wisdom. In order to receive the maximum benefit from this season, try to listen to the podcast in their entirety. One more thing, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review about the tips and practical advice given in this episode. If you need life coaching, please contact me. The information is in the description box. In this episode, I'm going to challenge you to be the person God created you to be. When we are children, one of the first things our parents, our teachers, and other adults ask us is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Very young children usually give the same responses, which include teacher, nurse, fireman, police officer, doctor, football player, basketball player. When television and radio were in their heyday, young people wanted to be entertainers just like the ones they've heard on the radio or saw on American Bandstand, Soul Train, and MTV. Soon the major studios began to pay their superstars millions of dollars per picture. And young people from all over the world began Hollywood, California dreaming, with hopes of becoming rich and famous. Let me ask you, what does it mean to you to become rich and famous? Do you want to be idolized and recognized and photographed every time you leave home? It seems so glamorous, doesn't it? Will that make you feel special and better than everyone else? Are you thinking that once you're a big star, that you'll be able to get the adoration and the respect that you've never received, and that black hole inside of your heart will be filled? Word of wisdom. What will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? There are some very talented people in all professions. There are probably thousands of people who can sing like Mariah Carey and perform like Beyonce. But we will never see them because there isn't room for 10 Mariahs and 5 Beyoncés. So many people spend most of their youth chasing a fantasy and never getting there. It doesn't mean that they were not talented. It just means that there are no job vacancies and your services aren't needed. In the entertainment industry, which includes professional sports, many people are told that they did not get the job because they were not good enough. Another way of saying this is that whatever the casting director or the team wants or what they were looking for, you weren't it. In the entertainment industry, it's all about the selection process, about being chosen or not chosen. Then comes the feeling of rejection when you didn't make the cut. It becomes very personal. It becomes a blow to your ego. Subsequently, you continue to spend money to perfect your craft. You take classes, you hire trainers, you attend parties to rub elbows with the high-level executives in order to be noticed and to stay relevant. Because the entertainment industry pays so well, most people will do anything to get a piece of the pie. Some people are one-hit wonders and receive their 15 minutes of fame. After they are never seen again on the big screen or the Billboard Top 100, many individuals have left Hollywood broke and in shame because they were never able to walk through another door of opportunity. Word of wisdom. Press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. Now let's talk about some people who became famous posthumously, but never rich. Artists like Monet, Matisse, Van Gogh, Augusta Savage, they produced paintings and sculptures that sold for thousands and sometimes millions of dollars after their deaths, for which they never received the acclaim or fortune while they were alive. Many scientists and inventors who are responsible for spearheading the Industrial Revolution have gone down in history without receiving money for the products they invented after they were able to be mass-produced. There are many people who are rich without being famous, like the owners and CEOs of large hotel chains, department stores, and sport franchises. Most of them can walk into a restaurant or through the lobby of a hotel and not be recognized. Now I want to turn your attention to three people who were rich and famous: Elvis Presley, Michael Jackson, and Princess Diana. It's my opinion that they always enjoyed the money, and who wouldn't, and probably the fame for a few years. But after being constantly chased by paparazzi every time they left home, it began to take its toll. As a result of being rich and famous, they had no privacy and had to hire bodyguards for protection. They all died early and tragically, with their fame and fortune outliving them. From the artists, the inventors, and the CEOs and entertainers I just mentioned, how many of them do you believe were walking in their calling, do what God called them to do? This is not a rhetorical question, but a question I want you to think about in depth and journal about later as you listen to the rest of the podcast. There's a big misconception among most people. The belief is that if God has called you, that means that he wants you to be a preacher or a missionary. This belief keeps so many people from saying yes to their calling. If you're doing what God called you to do, there will be joy and satisfaction in what you're doing. Of course, there'll be setbacks and difficult times. That's just life. If you're in adulthood, God has already spoken to you about your calling, your purpose, or your profession. I've counseled hundreds of people about their calling, and most of them will admit to knowing what God has called them to do. Some were confused about what God was saying because they were given the wrong interpretation, or it was just dismissed as a meaningless dream. First, I want to talk to those of you who don't know your purpose or what you were called to do. So get out your journal and write this down. Number 1, what are you good at and what do you like to do? Number 2, write down a recurrent dream that started in childhood or early adulthood that speaks to your soul. Number 3, write down the kind of job you have currently and the kind of jobs you have had in the past. Number 4, now determine if there's any correlation between the three, and if so, draw a conclusion. Read some scripture and ask the Lord to reveal your calling to you again. Don't deny what you hear or see. God may speak to you through a book, a song, a commercial, a billboard, a stranger, or he may even speak to you through a donkey. If you don't receive the answer in a couple of days, read Ephesians chapter 1, 17 through 19, every day out loud, and let those scriptures be your mantra. Let me pray that over you. May the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of glory, may he give unto you the spirit of wisdom and revelation and the knowledge of him. May the eyes of your understanding be enlightened, that you may know what is the hope of your calling and what the riches of the glory of your inheritance in the saints. And may you know what is the exceeding greatness of God's power to us who believe, according to the working of his mighty power. Once revealed to you again, you may feel overwhelmed because you believe that the task is too great for you alone. Let God be your CEO and your LLC. Stay under his covering and guidance. Once revealed, the next step is to decide if you want to say yes. It is your choice. You have free will. If you say yes, then surrender and do it God's way. Now I'm going to talk to those of you who know what you're called to do and you decided not to do it. So get out your journals and make 2 columns. Number 1, in the first column, write down 3 or more reasons why you did not follow through. Number 2, in the second column, write down 3 or more reasons why you should follow through. Number 3, next compare the 2 columns and draw a conclusion. Number 4, what are your fears related to your calling or your purpose? And number 5, if you say yes to your calling, how will your life change? In order to hear from the Lord and get clear directions about the next steps, then you need to be a clean vessel. That means breaking bad habits like smoking, drinking, overeating, undereating, gossiping, and other things that the Lord has been talking to you about specifically. Stop hanging out with people with the same bad habits. Some of you can do this instantly, and it will be a gradual process for others. Once you begin to move away from the unclean behaviors and attitudes, don't be surprised if your old running buddies turn their backs on you. They will do this because they don't want to see you do better as you grow and develop in the marvelous light. Their flesh or their souls crave those bad habits, and being in your presence will convict them to do better and to be better. They aren't ready to change, and that is why it is so uncomfortable being around you. Now I use fictional characters to illustrate real-life circumstances. What I talk about, I know about. Dorothy and Buddy have been married for 25 years, and they live in Austin. Dorothy is 52 and originally from Kansas City. After graduating from high school, Dorothy worked in retail before she started working for an airline as a flight attendant. Buddy is 56 and is originally from New Braunfels. He was a drummer in a rock and roll band that never became rich and famous, so he decided to go to trade school and become an aircraft mechanic. They both work for the same airline and are eligible for retirement on December 31st, after 30 years of employment, respectfully. They're empty nesters. Their 2 grown boys are married and live out of state. Dorothy and Buddy are trying to figure out what they want to do after retirement. They are both in good health and don't want to sit around the house. Because they work for an airline, they were able to fly for free and have been all over the world in the past 30 years. Buddy said that he wants to open a bar on 6th Street called Buddy's Mile High Club. Dorothy was quiet for a while and wasn't sure if she wanted to tell her husband about her recurring dream. She knows that dreams are symbolic, and she wasn't sure if Buddy would take her seriously. Dorothy finally got up the nerve to recount the dreams and told him not to laugh or make fun of her. Buddy promised not to laugh while she was talking and told Dorothy, well, just go ahead and tell me all about your dream. Dorothy said, well, the dream always starts out the same. She's a child and she's at home with her family in Kansas City. It is storming and there are dark clouds and tornadoes in the area. The tornado sirens begin to sound, and before she and her family can get safely in a bathroom or in the closet under the stairs, the roof is blown off and the house collapses. She panics, and because she can't find her family, she begins to run and cross the road. She goes to the town square, and she remembered there's a safe place behind the courthouse on the brick road. Her husband looked at her side-eye, and she could tell what he was thinking. Dorothy said to him, no, Buddy, it was not a yellow brick road, but it was actually an emerald green one, she said sarcastically. Then Dorothy continued and said that at the end of the brick road was a building with a sign that read, House of Refuge, there is no place like home. So she clicked her heels 3 times for good luck before she took off her red-bottomed stilettos. As she ran towards the house, she was getting hit by flying debris and was thankful there were no
lions and tigers and bears. Oh my.
In her peripheral vision, she actually thought she saw flying monkeys, which scared her to death. She made it to the house just in time before the staff barricaded the door. Once inside, she was told to go to the basement where she saw several women and their children in triage behind a curtain, being treated by the physician on call, Dr. Oz of all people. She was asked to help because they were short-handed. Dorothy said, well, that's the end of the dream, and she wakes up. Buddy said that he did not know what the dream meant, but it was very entertaining and somehow familiar as he laughed. And he turned on the TV. Dorothy was not happy with Buddy's attitude and decided to spend the weekend fasting and praying. And one night after having the same dream, she heard a voice that told her to help women and children to take refuge from the storms of life. She then remembered that she got the same message early in her 20s, and she felt so overwhelmed then because she did not know how she was going to accomplish the task. She tried to forget the dreams, but when she turned 50, they came back with a vengeance. And after 30 years, she finally understood that she was called to open a shelter for women and their children. She talked to Buddy about starting this project after the first of the year. He agreed, and he told her that he decided not to open a bar on 6th Street because it was too dangerous, too time-consuming, and it was more of a fantasy. In his imagination, he thought that owning a bar would make him rich and well-known in the area, especially during South by Southwest. He then disclosed to Dorothy that God had spoken to him at the young age of 15 and told him he was called to mentor boys and young men. As he got older, Buddy realized that he was not ready to make the sacrifice of giving up drinking, smoking, and gambling. He fooled himself into thinking that what he heard was not real. He said now that he has turned 56, that he has had enough of smoking and gambling and is ready to do what God called him to do. And he is glad that he and Dorothy can embark on this new chapter in their lives together. Did you notice how he left out the drinking? This is quite common because most people don't want to give up everything they consider fun and will be careful not to indulge in public to appear holier than thou. As we jump ahead 5 years, Dorothy was able to get funding from 2 philanthropic organizations, as well as receiving a federal grant to build the House of Refuge. She has felt such a need in her community that she now sits on several board of directors and thanks God every day for giving her the opportunity to serve. Shortly after retirement, Buddy started volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club and became a big brother as well. He decided to start his own agency called Mentoring Boys to Men. He recruited men from all walks of life to help him make a difference in their community. I hope you have learned from Buddy and Dorothy that it's never too late to say yes to your calling. Dorothy realized that she was not a scared little girl from Kansas, but a mature woman who could help other women and their children navigate through the storms of life. Buddy said that he feels guilty for waiting so long because he always knew what God wanted him to do. He thought that if he gave up his vices, that he would lose his friends and his life would be dull and boring, especially after being in a rock band. But after going a mile down the road to the river, Buddy got the nerve to ask the Lord to deliver him from all of his addictions. And since then, he has not had a desire to drink, smoke, or gamble. The lesson in this example is that Dorothy and Buddy are not rich and famous, but they're happy and content and have said yes to their calling. They have enough money in their retirement funds to live the rest of their lives comfortably and in peace. For this next illustration, I'm going to use a fictional character named Max. He is a 19-year-old college student. He grew up in church, believes in God, but has stopped attending church since he has moved out of state to attend college on a basketball scholarship. Max is very tall, he's very dark, and he's very handsome. He is charming and has never met a stranger. And one day when he was in his dorm room alone, he heard a voice that said, "As a minister of God, I want you to show them the way, the only way." Max was not sure what the Lord meant, but he was certain that he did not want to be a preacher, and he decided to ignore what he heard. Even though he tried, he couldn't get the thoughts out of his head. He kept perseverating on the message, and no matter how hard he tried to drown it out, he was so uncomfortable he decided to go work out at the gym across town, even though there was a great sports facility on campus. He thought the drive would help to calm him down. He drove the usual route, but this time a one-way sign caught his eye, and he didn't remember that Main Street turned into a one-way street by First Church. The thoughts came back into his head, and he tried to laugh it off and said, "What a coincidence." He turned into the parking lot of Jupiter Fitness and found a spot up front. As soon as he got out of the car and locked the doors, he saw a gold chain with a cross on the ground. He picked it up and gave it to the staff at the front desk for the lost and found. As soon as he handed over the necklace, a young woman who was bold and beautiful came over and asked if anyone had turned in a gold necklace with a cross. The staff member told her that she was in luck, and the young and restless man standing next to her found it in the parking lot. She was so happy and smiled and then said to him, "I don't know why I'm telling you this, but one day you're going to help thousands of people find a way. You know, one way, the only way." Then she turned abruptly and went back into the gym. Max didn't know what to think of this, as chills ran up and down his spine. During the next month, every time Max turned on the television or used his phone to scroll through social media, he would see churches, crosses, one-way traffic signs. To distract himself, he tried to listen to his playlist, and instead of hearing Drake, he heard someone talking about fulfilling your purpose. After this, he became so frustrated that he began to yell at God at the top of his lungs, and he said, "I'm not doing it. I will never be a preacher." Then he jumped into his bed, put on his Beats headphones, pulled the cover over his head, and went to sleep. Now I'll bring you up to date. Max graduated with a BS degree in communications and marketing. He was offered a full-time job with an advertising firm. He was a great public speaker and could hold a crowd's attention with his charm and quick wit. Max gave great presentations that were thorough and dynamic. He was able to close deals for companies that were looking for an advertising firm that would market their products in print and in the digital marketplace. After 2 years, he became the CMO in charge of marketing for the Southwest region. His company soon realized that there was something special about Max, and he became the representative to handle accounts for large corporations that were willing to invest millions of dollars for an advertising campaign. Every month he gave a seminar to the sales force, and during his last presentation he saw a face in the crowd that looked familiar. She was sitting with the new hires. After the presentation, it was customary for him to mingle so he would get to know his sales force and answer any additional questions. After talking to each of the new employees, he spent a lot of time talking to the young woman named Kim. After making small talk, they soon discovered that they both work out at Jupiter Fitness. When Max saw the cross around her necks, he remembered that they had met briefly 5 years ago when he found her necklace in the parking lot. They exchanged numbers, began to date, and married a year later. Max became very popular and well known in the industry. He decided to start his own podcast about marketing advertising in today's society. And when his company heard about it, they told him that it was a conflict of interest and he would have to end his podcast. Max and Kim talked about it. They weighed the pros and cons, and they decided that Max should quit and spend more time developing his own brand. His podcast was on all the major platforms, and in less than 6 months he had 50,000 subscribers. He wrote a couple of books to sell at his seminars, and his business began to increase exponentially. He soon had to hire a full-time staff because he had become a best-selling author as well. He offered his in-person seminars all over the United States and Canada. He found his niche. He taught leadership, communication, and how to market to specific demographics, which no one else had done before. One day, unexpectedly, Max received a call from a popular podcaster that wanted him to come on his show and tell his rags to riches story, Unclub Shan Shan. He and Kim were so excited, and they knew that if this podcast aired, there would be no turning back. He spent an hour and a half at the studio talking to the Hall of Famer. The show was edited to 60 minutes, and it aired the following week. During the next month, his podcast grew to over 100,000 subscribers. He started to receive so many emails and phone calls that he had to hire another person to handle the increase. When he was in Montreal, his seminar oversold, and he had to move into a bigger ballroom at the hotel. And at the end of his presentation, he received a standing ovation. While the attendees were standing and clapping, he heard a still small voice that said, "Show them the way, the only way, one way." He told himself that he's not going to give up being a multimillionaire to preach. "No way is that going to happen," he said. When Max got back into the hotel room, he called Kim to check in, but decided not to tell her about the message from the Lord. When he got into bed, he tossed and turned and couldn't sleep, and called Kim again and told her what the Lord said. She was very calm and told Max that she knows what the message means, and they will talk about it when he gets home tomorrow. The next day after dinner, Kim told Max that during the call last night, she remembered that the Lord gave her the same message at the gym after he found her necklace 6 years ago. She prayed about it, and the Lord told her to tell Max that he's a marketplace minister, not a preacher. Max let out a big sigh of relief as Kim continued to explain. She pulled up Zig Ziglar's bio on the internet and showed Max a list of books that he wrote. She said that he was a motivational speaker that integrated his faith into his seminars and would give altar calls from time to time. She then pulled up John Maxwell's biography. Max was familiar with his books and podcasts, but did not know anything about his personal life. He read that he was a pastor before he started teaching leadership. John also integrates his faith into his seminars and will list Bible verses in some of his best-selling books. She told Max that it is now between him and God about if and how he's going to accept his calling. After spending the weekend praying and reading his Bible, Max was clear about what the Lord wanted him to do. He decided that all of his books and seminars would be founded on biblical principles. Max soon became well known as a Christian leadership and motivational speaker, which increased his book sales and attendees at his seminars. He told his wife that if he had known this when he was in college, that he could represent God without being a preacher, he would have jumped in head first. In his field, Max became rich and famous, which was part of God's plan. This enabled him to reach thousands of people worldwide with his books and online and in-person seminars. If Max had said yes while he was in college, God would have given him another piece of the puzzle. It is written, "Now our knowledge is partial and incomplete, and even the gift of prophecy reveals only part of the whole picture." Well, we're coming to the end of the podcast, and in this segment, I've illustrated the ways in which God will speak to you about your calling. This knowledge will increase your personal growth so that you can be all you can be in order to live a more harmonious life, fulfilling your purpose with passion, positivity, and the power of the Most High. I enjoyed being with you, and I hope you enjoyed the podcast as well. For your individual life coaching and consulting sessions, please DM me on Instagram at Dr. Julia Floyd. And please follow me on YouTube and Facebook. The links are in the description box. Before you go, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review because we're all in this together. And I'll see you next time on Harmonious Living with Dr. Julia. Ciao.